our boys literally did hide on this plane, which is both funny and a little bit heartwarming to see that they weren't going to let our boys go in it at it alone. And I like that about this episode. Just having that little heartfelt moment around so much insanity and action and bloodshed. I mean, there was definitely some bloodshed, but the thing that makes this episode, I think, so compelling is the clarification about the previous Lord, the current Lord, and Riesel's relationship, and what has drove such a wedge between the Noblesse and the Lord, which back in the past was a pretty tight-knit group, and now is someone wanting to hunt down and forcing you to kneel and obey the master, so to speak. And this was quite fascinating, and while it's not the most original thing ever, I do like the direction of a very jealous daughter who misunderstood clearly what the Lord was saying, have you any interest in being the Lord? Most likely was a conversation that went the direction of, I'm just curious about your desires. Riesel's like, absolutely not. He's like, of course not. You've never had that interest, and my daughter is clearly going to be a great lord is probably the direction the conversation went. Or maybe he was like, it's a shame, you'd be a better lord than my daughter or something. But most likely it's on the more sweeter side that she misunderstood and that caused such a resentment. It's something I've definitely seen handfuls of times, but I think it works in this series quite well, especially considering that she definitely does feel like the jealous type, because the Lord doesn't make enough time for pretty much anyone, let alone his own daughter. But the idea that the time he does have was spent with someone who didn't even want to be around him unless he was summoned. So you understand the resentment, and you do see the dedication to her studying and how much she was really trying to be the perfect model student for her father. And to see something like that and to hear something like that, it definitely is understandable. And I think it causes an interesting wedge, because you can clearly see her current actions are very much contested by the people that follow her, saying like, two of our clan leaders are being imprisoned. This goes against anything we've seen in recent memory. And while I don't think she's going to get betrayed or anything, I do think there's going to be quite a big conflict next week to wrap up the first season. And it'll be interesting to see what's going to happen, because while I don't think she's going to die, I do think there's going to be some hell to pay, especially considering that they previewed this Ragnarok sword. I feel like that's about to get used or something like that, which would be pretty insane. Even for an episode that wasn't really the action episode to end on, it was surprisingly well polished. Like the Regis stuff when he was like bouncing around and doing flips, that looked like human movement. Obviously humans can't jump as high as he can, but like the way they were flipping around or punching him, things like that, it was so smoothly animated that if next week ends on a giant fight, I really hope that level of quality that we got a glimpse in this episode will remain in next week, because it was some of the best animated stuff we've seen in this show. And while it was very brief, it was impressive to say the least. So I'm really excited to see what they're going to do in terms of like action spectacle next week, but most importantly, the emotional side, because the series definitely shines the most when it's on its serious emotional side, backed by some gorgeous animation with its fight choreography and things like that. I think the idea of pretty much like knowing that Riesel didn't betray or kill the Lord, and if he actually did kill the Lord, it was done so on his command, like the Lord was like, hey, kill me because of this or that. So the idea of him being branded as traitor and, having characters who very much trust in the current Lord betraying the current Lord, it's interesting because you don't know their exact motives, but at the same time, it does feel like this kind of hierarchy, this rulership is ready to crumble. It almost feels like it needs to crumble and start anew. Not that the Lord needs to be replaced, but more so she needs a wake-up call to the truth and what's going on, so that she doesn't rule with an iron fist, but maybe invokes confidence and respect similar to her father. And I'm still very interested in what happened with the father, but it's going to be really cool to see the confrontation that's clearly about to happen. Because really, we haven't seen anyone give Riesel a run for his money, but you would assume the Lord could be the person to do so, especially considering the amount of followers she has and how powerful those clan leaders actually are. I think this episode was probably the most emotionally engaging episode that we've seen to date. I think just having so much emotion being conveyed through all the body reactions and even just seeing like the friendships that built. And generally friendship is something you roll your eyes at in anime because like, oh, the power of friendship, this and that. But, someone like Riesel was a very lonely person up until Frankenstein. I mean, just look at the Lord saying, like, he is your family. You've changed since you've met him. And the idea that these, Riesel's knights came to his aid and are saying, like, you could have done this, you could have done that. Doesn't matter to me. You saved my life. I'm going to save yours. He really has gone from just having Frankenstein in his lonely life to now having a large group of family and friends that he can rely on and trust in. It definitely shows you a difference in his lonely life to his very peaceful life, which is why he wasn't going to get betrayed on by the other clan members, because, it's something that he's enjoying, he's not doing anything wrong, but the Lord doesn't know that, and it's going to cause conflict, which for us is amazing, because the conflict provides for amazing eye candy, but could also end in bloodshed that doesn't need to happen. I think this show definitely has a lot going on for it, and on one hand, I kind of wish we got to see some of this stuff much earlier in the season because it is so emotionally engaging, it's so meaty in substance. But at the same time, the stuff that came before does build up that relationship that's needed. But I think it just goes hand in hand that this is such a weird formula of a show that if you liked it from the beginning, you're just feeling rewarded watching it. But there's so much here that I know so many people would like, but I understand why the stuff that came before just wasn't for them and they found it boring. But I definitely think that this is a show that definitely has this very old school presentation that I think really works in its favor. This old gothic horror aesthetic that's, it's nothing crazy in the mundane scenes, but when it kicks into high drive and it really does get its motors going, you just feel like this is gorgeous and matches some of the high quality that we've seen in the previous webtoon anime. And that's what's really fascinating about it, is that it never tries to hook you in visually to keep you interested. It tries to say, these are our characters. They may not look like anything at first glance, but the more you watch them, the more they become something truly special. And even a character like Gryzel, who's, I don't even know how many words he's spoken. I think it'd be a fun thing, to go back and count. He hasn't spoken a hell of a lot in this show, but I would argue he's had some very interesting development based on the other characters. And at first, Frankenstein, like the way he was treating him, you would say, why is he so dedicated? But just seeing the past and just what he is and what was expected and just how lonely of a life he lives, you really do see this development that's very hard to put into words, but when you watch the episodes, and through 11 episodes, we've really gotten to see a really great sequence of character development for arguably one of the characters who's had the least spoken words of a protagonist in a show that I've ever seen, but they've done so fairly well, I'd have to say. I think Noblesse has a really good foundation to go off of for this last episode. I mean, based on the setup, based on the confrontation, I do think we're going to see something pretty crazy, and I hope we do. Not only just because the action does look incredible in Noblesse, I think it would provide a really good wake-up call for both of these characters, a mutual ground that won't end in bloodshed, because I don't think the current Lord's a bad person. I think she's just delusional for what happened in the past and how her father actually felt about her, and if something can get through to her, some sort of memory, some sort of conversation, I mean, if we actually have Gryzel fully give a conversation of what happened, I mean, not only would that be shocking because it'd be the most he's ever spoken in the show, it would also hopefully provide a wake-up call that she needs, because I was thinking that she was a bad person walking into this episode. Walking out, she's just a misguided person who clearly had a good heart that just got manipulated into thinking the wrong things, and I'm hoping that she can break out of this shell and become the Lord that her father knows that she could have been, because currently she's not the Lord that she wants to be, nor did her father want her to be. I think this was a really great episode. It was emotionally engaging and it was visually impressive, and if this is anything to indicate what the last episode's going to look like, this is going to be a great finale. Let me know your thoughts and feelings down below, your favorite moment, and where do you think it might go next week. If you enjoyed the video, of course, leave a like, share your support, and hit that subscribe button if you happen new around here. So until next time, everyone, please take care and have a good one.